Hi there, my name is Ewan Nicholson. Welcome to the Religious Trauma Counselling YouTube channel. I'm one of the coaches and counsellors from the religiostraumacounselling.com website. If religious trauma and healing religious trauma is something you have an interest in, this is a channel where we explore all the subjects in and around healing religious trauma. So you can click on the subscribe button and you'll get any videos that we put out on a regular basis. So today we're going to cover a subject that I think is very near and dear to me, but I think it's also something that's very important for anyone that's in the process of healing religious trauma. And that is the question of how do we regain our trust and confidence in our own knowing. And in this video, what I'd like to go through is why that's such a big issue, why often we come out of religious environments with a complete lack of trust in our own knowing, what are the mechanisms that end up creating that issue to deal with. And then in the second part of the video, I'd like to look at how do we heal that? How do we remedy that? How do we arrive back at a point where we feel a confidence and clarity in what we know to be true and our own personal truth? So I think if you've come from a very strict religious background and you're in this process of healing religious trauma, there's a common theme that I encounter in my work and in my own personal life, which is this feeling of moving out of this religious environment and feeling a complete lack of confidence or clarity in what do I know to be true? Like what's my truth? Because the nature of religious indoctrination is truth is something that we're told. It's something that's kind of put upon us. Someone worked out this truth 2,000 years ago, X amount of years ago. Some individual somewhere told the world what was true. People followed that person. It becomes a religion, and then their acolytes are then distributing that truth in inverted commas. And our job is to believe. And I think particularly when you've grown up in a religious environment as a child, the question is just here is the truth. Here's the way things are, and your job is just to kind of like take that, believe that, and have faith in that, and kind of get on with that. And that's what we do. And on one level, what happens in religious environments is it's not that we think, I believe what someone told me. Over a long period of time, we internalize that. It's like that thing that we're initially told becomes something, I believe in that, and that's my truth. And now and it just happens to be perfectly aligned with what we've been told, but that becomes internalized. But in addition to that, and this is another piece with religious trauma, often this religious indoctrination has occurred within a family system. So not only are we to believe this thing that we've been told over and over and over, our sense of safety, love, belonging, and acceptance is contingent on this need to believe ardently this spiritual truth, this religious truth, whatever it may be. So not only do we internalize it because it's just the nature of hearing something over and over, we also internalize it because it's believing this is part of how we feel safe and how we feel loved in our family systems. So, there's a lot weighing on this. Now, what happens in the process of exiting a religious environment or considering exiting a religious environment, we're faced with this sense of, there's an understandable certain amount of fear that arises from that, because as I let go of these religious beliefs, I'm potentially also letting go of the source of love and safety that accompany these religious beliefs. So, we can see why holding on to this truth that we've been told is true, it's very loaded and very charged because there's a lot contained in it. But nonetheless, somewhere for most of us, we end up in this part of our journey where that's exactly what we do. For some people, it's a gradual process. For some people, they kind of pull on a thread and it all seems to come undone. And what occurs is we arrive at this point where we suddenly realize this thing that I felt was true, I really believed, suddenly I'm doubting this. So suddenly it feels like it's just not true. And what occurs at that point is we're left in a kind of a vacuum. There is a space suddenly that arises that was never there before. These certain, clear, definitive answers about the way the world was, our place in the world, what we had to do, what we had to not do, from the way we had to dress, from what we had to believe, the way we related, all these things that were just laid out for us. Suddenly, if they're not true anymore, well, what is true? And we enter into a space of the unknown, of uncertainty. And I think for many of us, the temptation at that point as we reject one set of beliefs and reject the authority from one set of beliefs, is we could easily switch to another authority. Now that could be scientific atheism, it could be a number of different things where we feel like we're going from taking the certainty of the preacher to the certainty of Richard Dawkins or Sam Harris, or whoever it may be, where it's like, or the scientists in inverted commas, that they now hold the truth and it's now their truth that I take in and digest and make my own, rather than sit with the uncomfortable feeling of, I don't know. And to get to our own truth, for many of us, that I don't know period, that bridge between letting go and establishing something new, there's this mysterious period of unknowing that it's tempting to kind of rush through it, but I think it's necessary to stay for a period of time in this sort of fertile soil of just not knowing and being able to be with that uncertainty and to sit with that uncertainty. Because what we're doing is we're actually practicing moving into a receptive space where we're not filling it instantly with some new theory or new authority, but we're allowing ourselves to be in this kind of this quiet space of, well, I don't know, and to sit with that. And that process of receptive space is a listening space. Well, what do I know? And this is the process of how we regain our sense of our own inner knowing and our trust in our own inner knowing. Because what occurs through the process of religious trauma is we all have inner knowings. And they don't really ever go away. They're just so buried so deeply. We associate them with shame, with wrongness, with all sorts of things, that we just lose access to our inner knowing, our sense of interior rightness, or a sense of what integrity is for us, or what is truth for us. We often these things are very innate in many of us, particularly as children. So what we're looking to do is to regain access to something that's just been buried. And for that, we have to move into a receptive listening space. Because what happens when we're brought up in strict family and religious environments, the question of what do you feel, what do you need, what do you want, they're just not questions that are asked. They're just irrelevant. What do I want? What do I feel? Unless it's about what we want on a pizza, in inverted commas, it's just not necessary. So it's often very unfamiliar for people coming out of religious trauma to even know what that even means. It just feels like this weird abstract question. Well, what do I feel to be true? What do I want? What do I need? These feels like strange, unusual questions because they've never been asked of us, and we don't ask them of ourselves. We just instantly defer to this authority. So we're regaining and refeeling into this sense of, what do I feel? What do I want? And sometimes when we ask ourselves that question, you can even stop the video and try it now yourself. What do I feel? What do I want? For me, what I encountered was just a blankness, like a numbness, like, I don't know. Because maybe deep down I pair with me being honest about what I want with getting in trouble, or feeling shame, or being humiliated, or not being loved. So it can feel scary to kind of re-access these feelings for us. So that often there's this layer of numbness or this layer of blankness, and that's the unknowns piece. Well, I don't know what I want. I don't know how I feel, and that's okay. So I sit with that. But little by little, something does start bubbling up. Something does start to kind of emerge of an authority within us, a knowing of what we want. And sometimes it can just be as simple as your taste in music, or your taste in food, or your taste in clothes, or your preferences of movies, things that you kind of inadvertently align myself, or I felt I did, with interests that were to do with conforming to the group, rather than like, I do really like this thing, or I really do have this opinion. So there's this rediscovery process, and rather than kind of necessarily tackling the big existential questions of, what is God or what is not God or reality, just, maybe start with things that are a little bit more gentle, a bit more easy in terms of your own tastes or your own preferences. And that's the beginning point. Because all we're trying to do to begin with is access this interior feeling of knowing. Somewhere in me, I do know. Somewhere in me, I do have a sense of what I think is true or what I need. But I just have to invite that feeling forward. And so this takes time. This is a very gentle and very gradual process. So you have to be very patient with yourself, you have to be very kind with yourself, and you have to see this as kind of very gradual. But what it's really important for you to know is that it's possible. It's possible for you to arrive at a point where you feel a sense of, yeah, like this is my truth. This is my interior inner knowing of what is or isn't true, or what I do or don't believe in. It just takes a little bit of time because we're undoing a lot of patterns that are very deep. And we're in a society and a culture where there's so many voices coming at us, and I'm aware mine is one of them right now, telling us, what is or what isn't, and it's all across all social media and YouTube and the television, whatever it may be. There's all these authorities on what is or what isn't. And so I'd encourage you to maybe for a period of time just shut off from some of that, just so you can work out, what is it that I feel? And that's a process that I went through. I stopped reading books for a while. I tried to stop watching so many YouTube videos. And I just had to come back to this feeling of, what's in me? And what's really going on in me? What do I want? What do I need? And if you invite that question little by little, bit by bit, you will start to feel like it's there. It never really left me. I just kind of had to bury it under. But that interior knowing, that inner sense of what's true for me is there. So look, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you've had any experiences of this, please, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. I try to reply to as much as I can. If you've liked this video, please like and subscribe, and take care of yourself, and bye-bye.